Our typical response to our problems is to change everything except our inner state. Ironically, we often respond by trying to lose ourselves in the world. We make drastic changes in our appearance and go on trips to find ourselves. While a shift in perspective gained from a new spot on the map can be beneficial, what you'll inevitably find is that the search will never turn over the answers you're looking for. Regardless of how far you travel or where you go, when the dust finally settles, you'll still be the same person who started running all that time ago. This mode of existential problem solving is rendered ineffective by the fact that you cannot possibly escape yourself while simultaneously finding yourself. Acting as if one can be found has a tendency to position us so that we're looking outward in our search. If we can just be in the right place or get the right job, we reason, all of our troubles will go away. Instead, we should strive to know ourselves at an intimate level. This level of self-knowledge is typically the result of radical honesty and a commitment to staying in the tension of emotion without running, coping in a harmful way, or hiding. Most of our dysfunction occurs because we only know the character we've been playing for the world, the persona we believe we need to be to find belonging and love in the world. Once you begin to get a glimpse of the freedom found in rediscovering the real you, the mask will begin to lose its appeal rather quickly. Knowing oneself is not about creating the new, but rather dredging up the forgotten and working through the ignored. You, in the truest sense of who you are, have been buried under the chaotic world around you. You must go back to the very moment you walked out of your essence and into the world. And this is where the original fracture in your psyche took place, so this is where you must go to mend it. By reparenting your inner child and teaching them to face the world without the mask, you reclaim the best of who you are. People have so much trouble finding your own identity and understanding exactly who they are because of the dynamic nature of the self. The paradoxical nature of our being is felt when you realize you must be in touch with the eternal and unchanging self, your soul or essence. Yet you're also in constant flux, as the version of you that shows up in the physical world is always making slight modifications based on the environment you're in. Our challenge is to allow our essence to shine through despite the perceived tyranny of the environment around us. The deeper we get into self, the more ease we feel when we're in the world. If you can remember that you're the one playing the game, but aren't necessarily the character you're playing, you can hold space for the fact that your character will evolve and change throughout the course of your life. And that's okay. Every evolution of your personality, interests, or passions is not a reason for an identity crisis. If you've previously taught yourself to deny parts of who you are for the sake of belonging to the world around you, you're limiting your own toolset for interacting with it. The anger you've learned to repress might be useful if you find yourself coming up against injustice, and you can learn to use it instead of having it use you. The heartbreak that you feel might open you up so you can experience the world in new and deeper ways. After all, how can a heart ever expand if it's not broken open? You might be able to follow your own suffering into a place that allows you to transmute the suffering of others. It's also likely that in doing so, your life will become incredibly meaningful to you. If most people do not have a fulfilled life, it is because they are too afraid of the path that will lead them there. It's through answering our call to adventure that our lives adopt a cycle of death and rebirth as the ego dies over and over in the underworld so that we can create the new within the one life we have. By answering whatever you're called to, you'll be subjected to lessons, and those lessons, although painful, will teach you who you need to be to continue. The less ego death that you suffer in this moment, the more stagnant you'll become. By committing to the process of growth through the death of the outermost self, we keep ourselves on top of the turbulent waters that always sit below the surface of our lives. In this, we see that to be born again is not the intellectual property of any single doctrine, but rather the birthright of every being who's been thrust into an impermanent existence with the courage to face it. The hero is an adventurer at heart, and the adventurer always chooses the narrow path that winds along steep and unstable cliffs instead of the paved sidewalks, because they know that if they do not, their soul will pay the price. The safe route and the route that will yield growth are almost always different. The thing about having two paths to choose from is that one will most likely seem easier than the other, and that one will probably be at odds with the right one. The person who ignores her own call will continue to feel estranged from herself and the world around her. All the while, the answer to her misery lies on the ignored path. It's not until the discontent of not knowing herself outweighs the fear of falling to the jagged rocks below the steep and narrow path of the cliff that she will decide to answer the call. Ignoring who you really are and what you really want can be comforting for a time as you receive outside validation for your ability to conform. But there will be no meaning found in this life. When you begin diving inward and prioritizing the voice within, instead of the many outside voices that surround you, you proactively build resilience. You create a sound frame that the world cannot penetrate because you're no longer asking it for validation. Once we remember who we are, we begin playing a game that is altogether different from the one society is playing. Resilience is not about resisting the constant change in your life. It's about flowing with it without losing track of who you are in the process.